Hi everyone. So today we're going to work on quadratic equations. So we're going to talk about how do we solve using quadratic equations, and we're going to learn some techniques about solving by square rooting both sides, and solving some applications involving square rooting both sides. So if you remember, we have talked about quadratics before, and this should look familiar: ax squared plus bx plus c, as long as a does not equal 0. And we didn't solve these, but we did factor these. And I think we have solved these. And we did some factoring. A lot of us used the box method or the split distribute method. Okay, so here's a review. All right, so we have our quadratic equation, and remember that when we're solving, we're looking for where the graph crosses the axis, specifically the x-axis. So in this particular case, the graph crosses at -4 and -2. And where did they come from? Well, they factored and then set our factors equal to 0 and solve, which we've done in the past. So let's try to remember that. So here we have x squared equals 25. So if you remember, we're going to set that equal to 0. Okay, we're going to factor it. This is a difference of squares. So we have x minus 5. X plus 5 is equal to 0. So we're going to use our product 0 principle and set each one of these equal to 0. Okay, and solve each. So we're going to get 5, and we're going to get -5. Okay, so that should look familiar. Why don't you... I'm so sorry. Pause the video and try the next one. All right, so here you go. We should get -8 and +8. Now, when our quadratics are set up this way, this is not the only method that we can use to solve. The other method is using the principle of square roots. So we would solve by square rooting both sides of the equation. And if you notice that there are two solutions, when x squared is equal to a number, and one is negative and the other is positive. Again, keeping in mind that when you take the square root, you're asking the question, what number times itself gives you that number? So if we're looking at, 100, okay, we would go, okay, 10 and -10, because 10 times 10 is 100, but -10 times -10 is also 100. So there's some things that we should do, like get the variable by itself. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3 here. And we're going to get x squared equals 2. Okay, we're going to square root both sides. So again, we're physically taking the square root. That means our answer will be a plus and a minus square root of 2. Now, because we just got done working with radicals, we should expect to be able to simplify this radical if we needed to, make our factor tree, find the perfect factors, and be able to simplify it. But not much we can do with the square root of 2. Okay, so try the next one. Try number 2. Okay, and I got plus or minus the square root of 10. All right, so sometimes we have to do a little work, so I'm going to subtract 2. Divide by 5. Square root both sides. And again, we cannot leave it that way because, we can't have a square root. So I'm going to separate it. Square root of 2 over the square root of 5. And then we need to multiply top and bottom by the square root of 5 because we need to fix that. So we have square root of 10 over 5. Or the square root of 25, yes. Which equals plus or minus the square root of 10 over 5. All right, so pause the video. The next one's just like that. Okay, here we go. All right, so our final answer was plus or minus. I forgot my plus and minus. I would have taken points off if that was me. Square root of 3 over 3. Now, in all of 4 of these problems, our radical was positive. In other words, the number underneath our radical was a positive number, and we were able to find a solution. problem. That is not always going to be the case. So usually we write no solution and off we go. But we do have a solution to that, and that is called I. I is the square root of -1. It's what it represents. Okay, so for example, if I said the square root of -4, we can now go the square root of -1, the square root of 4. Square root of 4 is 2. Square root of -1 is I. So we're going to take out, we're going to like use our property of multiplication and take that -1 and take it out and give it its own thing, its own radical, and come out as I. And then we're going to take care of the whatever else is underneath there. So we're going to just kind of separate it out so we can deal with it and take care of it as I, and then deal with the rest of the problem. All right, so for example, okay, we're going to subtract 9. Divide by 4. Square root both sides. Okay, so now we have -9 over 4. Okay, so don't forget we can split our square roots. -9 over the square root of 4. Okay, the bottom is not a problem. Denominator is 2. No big. But we have the square root of -1, square root of 9. So the square root of 9 is 3. And then the square root of -1 is I, plus or minus. And then we have the 2. Now, I always put my integer first and then my I. It's just like kind of like what I do. You can make it I squared, I3, okay? But usually it's 3 i's, and what makes more sense. All right, try the next one. Try over here. So solve for your variable, square root both sides, take out the -1 with your I, and simplify your radical. Okay. So I got plus or minus 10i. Okay, so hopefully that negative makes sense. Okay, so we can do this with quantities as well. So you see here we have f of x is equal to x minus 2 quantity squared. Find out the values where f of x is equal to 7. So that means I'm going to take this 7. I'm going to put it in and say 7 equals x minus 2 quantity squared. So we're going to work square root both sides. Our whatever's being squared is already by itself, so we don't need to do anything yet. So we get plus or minus the square root of 7. Can't do anything with the square root of 7. Equals x minus 2. So we're going to be able to add 2, and I hope that's okay if I flip this around a little bit and go x equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 7. And that's as far as you're going to be able to go, because square root of 7 you can't simplify. If that was like the square root of 8, we'd be able to simplify it, but it's not, so we can't do anything with. Oh, I am so sorry. Okay, let's try this one. All right, so we're going to square root both sides. We get -5 plus or minus the square root of 3. Okay, so we can take this idea and solve some compound interest formulas. So A equals principal times 1 plus r to the t. R is your rate, principal is how much money you invested, t is time, and A is how much money you have after that certain amount of time. So Karina invested $4,000 at an interest rate R, compounded annually. In 2 years, it grew to $4,410. What's the interest rate? So we're going to use our formula. So our principal is $4,000. 1 plus R. We have 2 years, and we know it's $4,410. Now again, I'm trying to solve for R, but it's quantity squared, so I have to get rid of that 4,000 first. So we're going to need to divide $4,410 divided by 4,000. Okay, so we get 1.1025. I would write everything because I would not want to like round anything until the very end. Okay, so now we're going to square root, and we're going to need our calculators for this because we're going to need to square root that number 1.05. So we get 1.05 is equal to 1 plus r. Subtract 1, so let's just go minus 1. 0.05 is equal to r. And we can change that to a percent. So that's 5% is the rate. I think I left like a lot of room in the next page for this. Okay. All right, so let's try this one. Oh, that should be squared. Figured this out. There we go. It's like my correction fluid. Squared. Okay, s equals 16 t squared is used to approximate the distance s in feet. Then object falls freely from rest in t seconds. The Grand Canyon Skywalk is 4,000 feet above the Colorado River. How long will it take a stone to fall from the skywalk to the river? Round your answer to the nearest second. So our formula is s equals 16 t squared. We know s because 4,000 feet is our distance. S is our distance in feet. So we make sure it's in feet. So 4,000 is equal to 16 t squared. Okay, so we're going to need to divide by 4,000 divided by 16. Okay, so it's 250. It's t squared. So we're going to square root both sides. That's what I get for doing my fingers. So 15.81 equals t. Now, notice I'm not doing plus or minus because it's an application problem. Distance can't be negative. So let's see. What does it say to have? Round your answer nearest tenth of a second. So it's going to be 15.8 seconds. All right. Let me know if you have any questions, guys. I'll talk to you again real soon. And please stay safe.